Hello, my name is Owen. Today I'll be doing a quick review of Essex Dogs by Dan Jones. What I'm going to do is give a brief overview of the book's about, tell you things that I liked, and tell you things that I didn't like. This might be the title of the video, but I think this is the first disappointment book that I've read so far this year. Not too bad. We got almost 5 months into the year without a super disappointment, but I was really looking forward to reading this book. It's hitting the shelves everywhere. The hardcover's like $30. You know, I just got it on Libby, though. It was free for me. But it's a historical fiction, follows like the invasion of France by King Edward III. So Dan Jones is typically a pure nonfiction writer, like medieval nonfiction. And I actually bought his War of the Roses book like about a month ago. I haven't read it yet. It's probably going to be one of my next couple of books. But I didn't even realize that was also the same author of the book that I really wanted to read, which was Essex Dogs. So I read a book. It's nonfiction. It follows like this troop of like mercenaries who were on this war campaign. Really looking forward to it. And just starting with things that I didn't like, it just kind of... Now, listen, it wasn't a bad book. It just kind of fell a little flat for me because like a lot of war books where it's just about the war, it's just about the conquest, you lose a little bit of like story because the plot is moved by like forces so outside the main character's control. Like there is no like other quests that they have other than like stay alive, keep their band together. It's really just like take the orders, do the mission, take the orders, do the mission. And in that way, it kind of felt like the worst of Joe Abercrombie's books, because like his least favorite, Joe Abercrombie's, my least favorite book of his is Red Country. It kind of just felt like they moved to a town, encountered some people, they moved to the next town, and I didn't really feel like there was any like momentum pushing these characters forward, and that was the biggest flaw of this book. Like the characters, they're likable enough. I mean, they're not super dynamic, I wouldn't say. Like you got the classic like reluctant leader who's like getting too old for war, doesn't know if you want to do it. But it just felt like these characters were being pushed by the king, pushed by the war effort. And they say in the beginning that they're motivated by money, but they really don't talk about that a lot. And I don't know, it just felt like I didn't have a reason to keep me going with these characters. The writing style itself was perfectly good, perfectly entertaining, and the action combat scenes were very entertaining for me. And the most entertaining part of this book for sure is the character of Romford. He's like the young gun of the squad, and he has like a drug addiction, which is actually very interesting to read more about, like drug addiction in this time. And I think it's like cocaine or something, like some powder that he's sniffing up, because then he also gets to interact a lot with the prince, Prince Edward, the Black Prince. So he kind of is like the look into like the royal dynamics and like the dynamics with the generals and like the higher ups in the army, while like the rest of the dogs are just like mercenaries, like on the ground doing the dirty work and stuff like that. And that was honestly the strongest part of the book for sure. Is Dan Jones clearly has the historical background. Like I know I said that, even though I haven't read his books, I'm sure that his nonfiction books are outstanding because the actual history in this book is fascinating. Now, he says in the back of the book, like a lot of the characters, obviously he had to take liberties with, like the generals, they did actually exist. But obviously there's not this much dialogue, not this much character in like historical documents. The main characters, like the Essex Dogs themselves, are completely made up, but you could just tell like with stuff like the drug addiction and where they're going and in the cities they're sacking and like the enemy king and like the dynamics between the prince and the king. Like you could just tell it's rooted in history, and it makes that a lot more fascinating. But if this was a completely fiction book, I just don't think it would be that good. It's only because it's rooted in historical fact a little bit that I really found any interest in it. And also, I would have given this book like, I think I rated it on Goodreads like a 3-star, which is like really not that good at all. I think I would have rated it like a 4 or something had the ending been satisfying, but it really just kind of ended too. Like there was the final battle where like the prince and then like the dogs are all like reuniting and this fight final battle, and like ended in a way that like hinted at a sequel. They're like, oh, like we could leave. He's like, but one more time. I'm like, wait a minute. What? This was not that type of book where you like hint at like Essex Dogs 2, Electric Boogaloo. That's what it really felt like. It was like an unsatisfying ending, and like the characters didn't really change throughout the whole book. The only thing that happened is like spoilers, I guess, that like most of them lived. That's the only difference, is like the beginning of the book, like some people aren't alive at the end. Other than that, like I really didn't feel that much momentum, and I don't even know if I would read like a sequel to this book. That's how like overall just dry it was. Like the characters weren't entertaining enough that like I'm obsessed with these characters, and they didn't really have a plot other than just like the war itself. So I think I'd rather just read a history book about this war and like the big players rather than reading this book. And it's a shame because like overall, I know I'm just pooping on it. It's not a bad book. I am glad that I read it, but I was so excited for it, and it just kind of fell flat for me a little bit. Not super entertaining. However, like I said, I'm still gonna read his War of the Roses book because I think like obviously this guy's a genius historical wise, and I want to see what he's got because if his nonfiction books are as entertaining as his historical fiction book, it would be like one of the greatest nonfiction books of all time if that makes any sense. But in terms of fiction, he's got a little bit of work to do, I think, in that department. And I think this is his first historical fiction book, so, you know, he'll get better and better. So maybe I will give him another chance if he writes another historical fiction. But I also have to see just how his other books are set up, like nonfiction-wise. But yeah, so overall, in summary, characters kind of flat, story momentum, like a little bit impersonal, it felt like. And the ending was just kind of a dud. So yeah, greatest disappointment of the year so far, unfortunately. Very unfortunately, because I've been waiting to read this book for a long time. I waited for like 6 weeks on Libby to get it, but it took me like a month to finish too. So it actually expired, and I don't know why they didn't take it away from me, because it took me a really long time to finish it. But that's all I got for you guys. Check it out if it sounds interesting, but I think if you wanted to skip it, don't wait. Definitely do not buy it. I think it's literally $30 hardcover. Definitely not worth it. Get it for free if you're going to read it. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.